Be informed and stay up to date with what your elected representatives are doing on your behalf with the State House Report.
Hello, I'm Representative Rosalyn Henderson-Myers, and I represent House District 31 in Spartanburg County. I want to talk to you today about a little bit about my background, but also about some of the things that I have been doing in the legislature for my 7 years. By trade, I'm an attorney. I've been a practicing attorney for 30 some odd years, and I'm also a former Alabama State Court judge. In my life, my political life, I was with City Council for 2 years and then got elected to this position here at the State House, where I can work more on a state level and be able to help my constituents in my district, but also in the state of South Carolina as well. I've done a number of things that I feel good about in terms of legislation in South Carolina. Most notably, I have a bill that is actually was passed in the state unanimously, but Congress took it up and made it a federal law. So it's now called the Pump Act. The one in South Carolina is the Nursing Mothers Act. And so you will find both of those, one in South Carolina as well as the federal one. And the federal one mirrors the South Carolina bill almost exactly. So I'm very proud of that. That took a lot of hard work, working with various groups in terms of the business community, the faith-based community, as well as community advocates. And so that's now law. And so women need to know that when you have a baby and you want to go back to work, you can, because now there are required breaks to give you time to pump your breast milk so you can continue to nurse your baby. And also the law requires that there's a private space for you to do so under sanitary conditions and not be in a bathroom. So, and there are protections in place to make sure that employers are adhering to that law. Also, I have a bill that deals with domestic violence. One of the things that I do is I consider myself a champion for women's and children's issues, primarily because there's so few females down here in the state House of Representatives as well as the Senate. And so with our numbers being diminished, oftentimes women's issues and children's issues get pushed to the back burner. And so I'm here to make sure that we look to the needs that need to be met by our women and our children. One of which is I also have now, I did a bill which is now state law dealing with name changes, such that persons who come here from out of state or people in the state as well who are fleeing their abusers in domestic violence situations will have an opportunity to get their name and all kinds of identification information, address and things like that changed without a wait. At one point, South Carolina was one of the only states in the country that did not have a waiting period for someone to get a name change. And so what happened was we became the go-to state for persons from out of state who were looking to change their identity immediately. And so there wasn't a residency requirement. And so that bill established a 6-month residency requirement, but it also had a component that if you're a domestic violence victim, that you did not have to wait that 6-month period. And you could also, with that name change, have your record sealed so that you could maintain your new and private identity. One of the other things that I'm very passionate about is Medicaid. During COVID-19, all of the states were afforded the Medicaid expansion because of the pandemic emergency. But that has now been rolled back, and so South Carolina is one of a handful of states that has not accepted the Medicaid expansion. So we are leaving billions of dollars. I think it's $1.9 billion that we are leaving on the table that could go for treating and maintaining the health of our citizens, and particularly those who are not able to afford health insurance. So I'm working on a number of things to try to get a study committee or something to help us to cover those people who are now falling between the cracks, between those people who have insurance and those people who now make too much money to be able to sell themselves of the Medicaid funds to get health coverage. So that's a growing problem that we have in South Carolina and a number of other states. But I'm hopeful that we will have some movement on that pretty shortly, because North Carolina now has accepted the Medicaid expansion, and one of the things that South Carolina looks to is they look to the legislation passed in surrounding states to see what they're doing, and so that's a feather and hopefully an impetus for South Carolina accepting Medicaid expansion in the future. I am very adamant, as I said, about children's issues. We now have a law in place where books can be banned. Parents and others can make a complaint to the Department of Education, and books can be banned. And so, one of the things that really helps in terms of critical thinking is reading. And so not only just reading about what you know about, but reading about what you don't know about, so that you can have an opportunity to analyze it and really give your viewpoint about how you feel about something, and also to expand your mind about things that are going on in the world. And so that's a concern. We've had some bills that I feel are not good for South Carolinians, and that's one of them. The other one is the abortion bill. The Women's Caucus last year, the Democratic Women's Caucus, shall I say, last year did 1,000 hours worth of filibustering to try to prohibit this bill from going into effect over a 48-hour period. And so we were quite intent on making sure that we let the legislature know the voices of women who were concerned about the abortion issue. And when I say that, women, by and large, cross party lines, overwhelmingly feel that the government should not be telling a woman what to do with her body. Now, whether or not, the woman herself actually believes in abortion or not, many feel that the government cannot tell a woman what to do with her body. And so even those who may personally be against abortion. So that is something that we are continuing to fight. I know that there's some lawsuits going on concerning that. And so we'll see where that goes. But it's having a chilling effect on South Carolina, particularly in terms of physicians and medical students. For OBGYNs, part of the medical training is that they be trained on how to do emergency abortions for those persons whose life is at danger or the baby's at danger. They can no longer do that training now in our medical schools here. So what's happened is, or what's going to happen, and what's happening now is will continue and probably become more in the future, is that those persons who want to particularly go in the OBGYN field will not come to South Carolina to train. And I do know of physicians who are in South Carolina that are really seriously considering leaving, as well as physicians from outside of South Carolina who have decided that it's too much of a risk for them professionally to come to South Carolina, because in the abortion bill, it gives sanctions. So there's criminal sanctions of going to prison for 6 months. as well as a $10,000 fine. And then they may lose their license to practice medicine. And I will give you a little story of how that has come to impact my family personally. I have a daughter who is an emergency room physician in the Chicago area. And she is licensed. She's licensed to practice medicine here in South Carolina, and she was considering coming here and maybe working in some hospitals here so that she could spend more time with her family here in South Carolina. And when this abortion bill passed, she said, "Well, no, Mom, I don't think I can come." She said that, I could lose my license, they might try to put me in jail or something, because as an emergency room physician, they get whoever comes through the door. And so when you have a pregnant woman that may come through the door and her life is in danger or the baby's in distress, and she as the physician has to make a decision, given something very, very quickly that might have to be done immediately, such that there's not enough time for an OBGYN to get there, she could lose her license, or, and then, with her being licensed out of state, she could lose the license here in South Carolina, but she could also lose the license in Chicago, where abortion is legal. And so I don't think that the legislature thought about all of those ramifications. We have 14 counties in South Carolina that do not have any OBGYN physicians at all. And they're mainly in the rural areas. But there's been no thought to the practical implication of this abortion bill that we have in effect now, and all of the fallout that can happen from that. So those are some of the things that I'm working on. Recently I went to Washington, D.C., and met with some of our Congress people and senators and their staff, as well as the White House. Went and had a meeting at the White House about the summer feeding program that South Carolina has opted or has decided not to opt into. And so we're missing out on $65 million that could come to the state of South Carolina to feed our children when they are not in school, so during the summertime. Because oftentimes, particularly children who of lesser means and who are more at the poverty level, their parents don't have the monies to be able to feed them as they should. And oftentimes we have food deserts in our neighborhoods. And so those meals that a person gets from school, that a child gets from school, are very important to their nourishment and their nutrition. So our governor decided not to opt into that program, and so we're now trying to find workarounds to maybe work with some nonprofits and some other agencies and organizations and businesses that may want to invest and try to help with feeding our children during the summer. So this is I'm involved in a number of things, but I am very active. I always encourage anyone to call me. If I can't help, then I will certainly try to find the avenue for someone to help, and I'm happy to serve the citizens of South Carolina.